It was almost 3 a.m. when the last train pulled away, dragging behind it a lingering echo that bounced along the cold steel walls of the underground station. The platform was empty, almost. A boy no more than 10 sat curled into himself on a metal bench that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. His hoodie hung off his shoulders, oversized and thinning at the sleeves. He clutched a tiny backpack like it held everything he had left. A few feet away, wrapped in a threadbare coat, his mother slept sitting up, her head gently tilted against the tiled wall. Her legs were folded beneath her, arms crossed around two smaller shapes. Twins, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, bundled together under one gray blanket. None of them stirred as the wind from the departing train washed over them. Down the platform, footsteps echoed, measured, unhurried, boots clicking against the floor like someone familiar with both late nights and long silences. Keanu Reeves had taken this route more times than he could count. No entourage, no headlines, just him, the underground, and the occasional pause in places most people had stopped seeing. He spotted the family right away, not because they were making noise, but because they weren't. The boy's eyes, half shielded beneath the shadow of his hood, flicked toward him, then back down. Keanu sat one bench away, not too close, not too far. He said nothing. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and dust. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a cold, bluish glow that turned shadows into outlines. A few old newspapers drifted down the platform like fallen leaves. From the corner of his eye, Keanu watched the boy shift, adjusting the weight of the bag on his lap. One of the twins stirred, a small hand slipping out from beneath the blanket. Still, no one spoke. And for a long time, that silence held everything. It wrapped around them tighter than any jacket, heavier than any judgment. Keanu leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands folded. His gaze drifted, not at them, but past them, into the tracks, into the dark. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't ask questions. He remembered. Years ago on a street in Toronto, he had sat in almost the same position. No film credits, no tailored suits, just a young man with a backpack that had been stolen 2 nights earlier and hands too cold to shake. He hadn't cried then, but he had known what it felt like to be watched, and left behind anyway. The train sign above flickered. Next train, 42 minutes. Keanu exhaled through his nose, slowly. Then, as if something inside him nodded, he stood. The boy looked up. A long pause. And then, just barely, Keanu gave him a small nod. Not a gesture of pity, but one of respect. One human being acknowledging another. And then he walked away. But he didn't leave the station. Not yet. There are places where time slows down. Not to punish you, but to ask you quietly, will you see what others ignore? He did, and that made all the difference. Outside the turnstiles, the world slept. Keanu leaned against the cold, tiled wall just beyond the ticket machines, his hands deep in his coat pockets. The hum of the station pulsed behind him. Low, steady, like the memory of a song you haven't heard in years. His breath curled in the air. The city above was freezing, but that wasn't what chilled him. It was the way the boy had looked at him. Not with fear, not with desperation, but with that quiet, tired stare that asked nothing, because it had learned not to. He closed his eyes, and the tunnel of time pulled him back. Years, decades, cities away. Toronto. He was 19, maybe 20, his fingers numb from the cold, lips cracked. The back alley behind a laundromat had been his bed for 3 nights. His backpack was gone. His money, too. What little dignity he had left was buried under snow and silence. No one had stopped. People had looked. Some had hesitated. But no one had stayed. Back then he told himself it didn't matter, that he could make it alone, that needing help was weakness. But the truth? That kind of cold carves a loneliness into your bones that never fully leaves. And now, 30 years later, he stood with his back to a wall in a subway station, heart tightening for a child who reminded him of someone he used to be. The boy had barely moved since he left the platform. But Keanu hadn't gone far, just far enough to let the moment settle, to listen to whatever it was inside him that refused to walk away. He glanced at the vending machine across the hall. The blinking red light offered the only warmth in that corridor. He remembered something his mother once told him when he was just old enough to notice people hurting. Kindness doesn't wait for timing, it shows up, especially when it's not expected. He reached into his wallet, then paused. Money wouldn't fix this, but presence might. He turned, walked back down the corridor, past the flickering sign, back to platform 3. The boy was still there, his head now rested against his mother's shoulder. Her eyes were closed, but not fully asleep. That kind of rest doesn't come easy on concrete floors. Keanu didn't sit this time. He knelt, close enough to see the dirt smudged on the boy's sneakers, close enough to smell the faint scent of detergent that clung to the mother's coat. Washed, reused, washed again. He spoke softly. "Hi." The woman stirred, blinking slowly. Her body tensed, but she didn't pull back. "I don't want to scare you," he said gently. I saw you, that's all." For a moment, no one moved. Then she nodded once. It wasn't a welcome, but it wasn't a rejection either. He took it. "Can I bring you something?" he asked. "Food, blankets?" "No money," she said. Her voice was husky, proud. "We don't take money." Keanu smiled faintly. "Okay, no money." The boy's eyes opened again, met his, a little less guarded this time. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a granola bar. It wasn't much, but it was something. He placed it gently on the bench beside the boy. Then he stood. "I'll be back," he said quietly. And he walked again, this time with purpose. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It just sits quietly in the corner of your heart until someone else's story sounds a little too familiar. And when it does, you don't walk away. The steam from the coffee was already fading by the time he returned. 2 warm drinks in paper cups. A small paper bag with something sweet inside. He didn't know if the kids liked raisins, but it was the only muffin that looked remotely fresh. Keanu stepped back onto the platform like he had never left. Marissa Lane looked up, slower this time, less startled. The tension in her shoulders hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. He sat one bench away again, set the bag on the space between them, not offering, just placing. Silence. Then, after a moment, her voice, low, slightly cracked. "You're not with the outreach van?" He shook his head. "No." "You with the city? Another shake. "No, just someone who saw you." The boy peeked at the bag, then glanced at his mother. She nodded once. Permission, not pressure. Keanu leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because she wasn't used to the question anymore. "Marissa," she said. "That's Ellie and Jude." He looked toward the twins. They hadn't said anything, but they were listening, every word. "They're beautiful," he said. Marissa nodded slowly, looking down at them with that kind of quiet pride that doesn't need to be announced. For a while, no one said anything more. The platform buzzed above them. The wind howled faintly through the tunnel. A sign somewhere flickered. "I used to work in a bookstore," she said suddenly. "Corner of 6th and Hayes, the kind of place that smelled like paper and ghosts." Keanu smiled faintly. He knew the kind. "Let me guess," he replied. "You stayed long after your shift ended just to reorganize the poetry section." Marissa looked at him. Then, softly, she laughed. Just once. A short, surprised sound, but real. He continued. "You had a favorite chair by the window, worn-out cushion. No one else liked it. You never told anyone it was yours." Another smile, this time from her. "Did you used to work in a bookstore too?" "No," he said, "but I know what it means to love quiet places." Marissa's eyes dropped. Her hand curled gently around the coffee cup he'd brought her, not a sip yet, just holding the warmth. "I left because I was scared," she said. "Of what?" Of forgetting who I was. Keanu didn't respond right away. Then, with a softness that didn't pretend to understand more than it did, he said, "Sometimes remembering takes leaving." They sat in silence again, but it wasn't heavy. It was shared. Between two people who weren't strangers anymore, not quite. The boy leaned forward, resting his head against his mother's side. Ellie snuggled closer under the blanket. And in that moment, beneath the fluorescent lights of a forgotten platform, something shifted. Not the world, just the weight of it. Keanu stood up. "I'll be back," he said quietly. Marissa didn't ask where he was going. She only said one thing. "You didn't have to stop." He turned slightly, meeting her eyes. "I did." We don't always need to fix things. Sometimes just showing up is enough to remind someone they're still seen. And being seen is where healing begins. It took Keanu 15 minutes to find the late-night store. Not one that sold cigarettes and lottery tickets, but a place with warm lights and a woman behind the counter who looked like she knew why some people came in without saying a word. Eating rush. He picked the things slowly, one by one. A pair of child-sized coats, second-hand but clean, a thermal blanket, a juice box for each kid, a pack of crayons, and a notepad that might survive more than a day. He added a new pair of socks, 2 adult toothbrushes, 3 travel-sized tubes of toothpaste, and a single bag of honey oat cereal. Back at the station, the lights hadn't changed, neither had the air. But something else had. As he stepped back onto the platform, he saw that the boy, Jude, was no longer asleep. He was sitting upright, shoulders tense, eyes scanning for the man who said he'd return. He spotted him instantly. No words, but his eyes softened. Marissa looked up, surprised. He placed the bag down beside them, quietly. "I didn't bring money," he said, "but I brought what I could carry." Marissa's mouth opened slightly. Her hand hovered over the bag, but didn't move. "For the kids," he added. "And for you. Nothing fancy, just warmer." She pulled the coat out first, held it in her lap like it might disappear if she blinked too long. Ellie reached for the crayons. Her fingers brushed Keanu's wrist. She looked up, eyes wide, the kind of wide that comes from seeing too little beauty for too long. "You can draw on the bag," he said gently. She nodded. Marissa finally whispered. The question hung in the air. Not accusatory, not skeptical, just raw. "Because someone should," he answered. She blinked quickly, as if the word struck somewhere deeper than expected. "I don't want pity," she said quietly. "You're not getting it." Marissa looked away. "That's worse," she mumbled. "When they see you and pity you, like you're less than you were before." Keanu knelt down again. "You're not less," he said. "You're more because you're still here." Jude's hand slipped into the sleeve of his new coat. Marissa watched as Ellie colored on the paper bag with a crayon, as if she were painting hope back into the world, one stroke at a time. Keanu stood slowly. The rumble of an approaching train echoed in the distance, a low mechanical growl reminding them the world kept moving. Marissa stood too, straightened her shoulders. She didn't thank him, not with words, but when she looked at him, really looked, he felt it. Keanu handed her a folded receipt. "There's a shelter," he said. "Nothing official, just a converted church on 6th. They don't ask questions. They'll give you 3 nights, maybe more." She took the paper, then froze. On the back, written in messy pen, "You are not invisible, you never were." Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Didn't need to. He smiled once, just enough, then turned to walk away. Jude's voice stopped him. "Are you going to be here next time?" Keanu turned. A pause. "Maybe," he said. And then he left, his figure disappearing into the tunnel like a shadow that knew when it was time to go. Sometimes help doesn't come with a savior complex. Sometimes it comes with a coat, a crayon, and a receipt with handwriting that knows how to whisper. And sometimes that's all it takes. Raymond knew this station better than he knew his own apartment. The cracked tile near platform 2, the vending machine that jammed every third purchase, the hum of the lights, the smell of cold metal and forgotten time. He had worked the night shift here for almost 6 years. 6 years of watching people pass through, some loud, some silent, some drunk, some lost. Most of them barely noticed him. That was fine. He preferred it that way. But tonight felt different. He'd seen the woman and her kids for weeks now, off and on. Sometimes in this station, sometimes across the street near the underpass. She never begged, never caused trouble, just existed, quietly, like someone trying to fold herself into the margins. He'd offered her an old blanket once. She had taken it without a word. But tonight, there was something else. The man in the black coat. Raymond had spotted him the moment he walked in. Most people don't move that slowly unless they're drunk or dangerous, but this one moved like he had nothing to prove, like he was looking for something more than a train. He saw him approach the woman, not aggressively, not awkwardly, just present. And that alone had stopped Raymond cold. He stayed back, watched from the shadows, not because he distrusted the man, but because he wanted to understand what he was seeing. Kindness unannounced. No cameras, no commotion, just a man sharing space with strangers in the middle of the night. It didn't look like charity. It looked like memory. Raymond watched him return with the bag, how he handed it over, how he listened without interrupting, how he knelt when others would have stood. That hit something, harder than it should have. He remembered a time, long ago, when his own sister had been in a similar place, a shelter, 2 kids, too much shame to ask for help. She'd survived because someone hadn't waited for her to beg. Raymond had never forgotten that. And now, standing here, years later, watching this moment unfold like a quiet revolution, he felt something stir. Responsibility. Not the kind that came with a paycheck or a badge. The kind that comes from witnessing something honest and knowing you can't just walk away anymore. As the man left, disappearing down the corridor, Raymond stepped forward. He approached slowly, one hand raised, not to startle but to show respect. The woman looked up. Their eyes met. "I've seen you here before," he said. "Didn't want to interfere." She said nothing. "But if you're ready," he continued, "I know a place. It's not fancy, but it's warm, and no one asks questions you don't want to answer." She studied him, not with fear, with fatigue, the kind that knows hope always comes at a price. Raymond softened his voice. "I can make a call, quietly. You'd be safe." She glanced down at her kids, then back at him, and nodded. Just once. That was all he needed. As he pulled out his phone, he glanced down the platform again, half expecting the man to still be there. He wasn't, but the echo of what he did lingered in the stillness. Raymond didn't know who he was, but he knew this. He had changed something, and maybe, just maybe, it was Raymond's turn to carry it forward. Sometimes, the most powerful act isn't stepping in front of the world, it's stepping toward one person. Because witnessing kindness is a kind of invitation, and silence is not an excuse. The city didn't notice what had happened the night before. No headlines, no viral video, no trending hashtag. Just another morning in a place where people moved fast, eyes on phones, hearts guarded like storefronts after hours. But somewhere in a quiet corner of the city, the ripple had already begun. A woman named Nina Alston, program director for a transitional housing initiative called Rise and Room, received a message. Anonymous. Type. Reef. Untraceable. There's a mother with 2 kids. Names: Marissa, Jude, Ellie. She's near Central Station. She needs a week, maybe 2. I'll cover the first month. No press, no contact. Just help her find the door. Below it, a deposit confirmation. Enough for 6 months. Signed simply, K. Nina read it twice. She had received strange requests before: sponsors, donors, even the occasional ego project masked as charity. But this felt different. She acted quickly, a call to Raymond, a discreet team dispatched, a set of keys handed to Marissa by noon. No interviews, no staged smiles, just a studio apartment with running water, clean sheets, and a door that locked from the inside. Marissa didn't say much. She unpacked what little they had, gave the kids their own drawer each, let them choose their beds, even though both ended up in hers that first night, and taped a note to the inside of the closet. It read, "Not invisible, not anymore." That evening, across town, Naomi LeDuc sat in a design studio that smelled like coffee and ambition. She was reviewing a proposal for a new fall collection when her intern showed her something on the security footage feed they'd left running overnight. From the corner of a camera at Central Station, grainy, distant, almost forgotten, a man kneeling on a subway platform, handing a child a paper bag, a woman beside him, a child in her lap. No faces, no audio, just presence. Naomi didn't know who he was, but she knew how rare it was for a moment to feel that human, even through pixels. That night she sketched something new. Not for a catalog, not for sale. A wool coat inspired by the silhouette of the man on the screen. Simple, quiet, unbranded. She named it The Witness. Meanwhile, Marissa sat at the small kitchen table of her new home. Jude and Ellie were asleep, curled in blankets that didn't have to be shared with the wind. The radiator knocked once, then settled into a steady hum. She picked up the crayon Ellie had used to draw hearts on the grocery bag the night before, and began to write. To the man who didn't ask for thanks. I saw what you did, not just for us, but for the space we were in. You made it feel awesome. She didn't sign it, didn't know where to send it, but she folded it carefully and tucked it into the back of her notebook. Not because she expected he'd ever read it, but because she knew someone needed to write it. Sometimes it only takes one person to open a door, but the steps that follow, those belong to everyone. This wasn't a rescue. It was a relay, and it had just begun. A week later, the city was itself again. Rush hour sirens, late-night headlights, the constant hum of things that didn't know how to stop. In a quiet cafe on 14th and Willow, the kind of place where music played soft enough to leave room for thinking, Keanu sat by the window, a small black notebook open beside his untouched cup of coffee. He wasn't writing, just watching. Outside, life moved in streaks, jackets and briefcases, umbrellas folding in rhythm, strangers brushing shoulders without ever meeting. He didn't mind the stillness. Stillness had always been where he found the loudest truths. His phone buzzed once. A message from someone on the team, an update about the script revisions, a reminder about a meeting he'd probably reschedule. He let it fade. Instead, he pulled a worn envelope from inside his coat. No return address, no postage, just a folded piece of paper tucked into his notebook by someone who had known he'd eventually find it. He opened it. Read slowly. To the man who didn't ask for thanks. I saw what you did. Not just for us, but for the space we were in. You made it feel possible. Thank you for not walking away. He didn't smile. Not really. But something in his eyes softened, like a part of him had been carrying a weight he hadn't noticed until just now, when it lifted. He folded the letter again, carefully, with both hands, then placed it back inside the notebook, and closed it. Outside, a bus pulled to a stop. A teenager helped an older man with a cane step down from the curb. A child offered a sticker to a stranger. A street musician tuned a violin no one had asked to hear, but someone would stop for, eventually. He watched it all, and for a moment, it felt like enough. That evening, somewhere across the city, in a small room painted with soft colors and quiet effort, Ellie drew a picture of a man with long hair handing her a muffin. She titled it, "The Night the World Changed," and taped it to the wall beside her bed. Not all stories end with applause. Some just leave you a little better than they found you. He didn't need to be remembered. He only needed to be there. That was enough.